There was once a boy born into a house with no windows and only one door. The door was locked, and the only person he had was his father. At first, the house seemed safe. But if you look closer, the walls were damp and cracked. The air was heavy, musty, choking, thick with stench and rot. The silence echoed like a tomb. The walls seemed to lean inward, pressing close, as if the house itself wanted to swallow him whole. The only light came from a dull, flickering lamp. Their glow was weak, unsteady, and every flicker sent the shadows crawling along the walls as if they moved with sinister intent. The father fed him sweets and told him stories. He gave him toys and games, filling the silence with noise. And when the boy asked, "What's on the other side of that door?" the father whispered, "The door isn't real, son. Look around. This is your whole world. Everything you could ever want, it's already here." And the boy believed him because he had never known anything other than the inside of that house. But there were moments when chains dug into his skin, when shadows shifted too sharply, when the silence grew so heavy it pressed on his chest that the boy felt more than pain. He felt fear, a fear he could not name, one that seemed to breathe from the very walls around him. And in those moments, through the dim, flickering light, he would sometimes catch his father watching him from a dark corner in the room. And though the shadows blurred his features, it seemed as though he was smiling. Sometimes the father would vanish for days. The boy would search the rooms, calling out, but only silence answered him. Alone, he grew restless, fearful, and lonely. The emptiness of the house was pressing harder than ever. And yet, every so often, in the stillness, he thought he saw his father's smile glimmering from just beyond the shadows, watching and waiting. Then after a time, the father would return, and with a voice soft as honey, he would draw the boy into his arms and whisper, there, I am here. I'll never leave you." And the boy clung to him, desperate for comfort, never realizing he was clinging to the very source of his fear. As the boy grew, the father began to slip chains around his wrists and his ankles. At first, they were loose, almost unnoticeable. But with every passing year, the father tightened them just a little bit more. Sometimes the boy cried out, "Father, why do these chains hurt me?" And the father would pull him close, pat his head, and whisper, "That pain is your protection. These chains keep you safe. One day you'll understand." But with every turn of the iron, the chains dug deeper, leaving scars on his skin, marks he thought were just part of life. At night, in the glow of the lamps, the father would take out his paints, and the boy would sit and watch with wonder in his eyes, almost hypnotized by the brushstrokes. The colors twisted and swirled across damp walls, shapes, shadows, faces. And what appeared there seemed both beautiful and terrible all at once. Cold, sensual, wicked. They were alluring in their mystery, yet dreadful in their presence. The boy could not look away. Then, with trickery and illusion, the father made the images shimmer and move as though alive. Dark figures stretched across the walls, whispering promises of pleasure, power, and secret knowledge. And the boy believed them. He thought they were alive. He thought they held power. He thought in them was life. But in truth, only death resided there. Their guests were in the depths of the grave. He bowed before them, worshiping shadows, never realizing they were only stains on cracked plaster. The boy hated them, yet longed for them. He trembled under their wicked beauty. What terrified him also thrilled him. And every time he gazed at him, every time he indulged, the chains pulled tighter. Every indulgence twisted him, warped his appetite, and made him hunger for more. The house grew colder, the shadows deeper. And though the boy felt spellbound, he was only sinking deeper into slavery. But sometimes, late at night, the boy would hear it, a sound, a faint knocking at the door. Knock, knock, knock. It stirred something deep inside of him, something the father's stories and shadow dances could never quiet. But whenever the knocking came, the father's voice grew louder. The painted figures came alive, swirling, entertaining, distracting, and the boy forgot the knocking. Yet as the years passed, the knocking grew louder and louder still. It wasn't just a sound anymore. It was a presence. It followed him into his sleep. It echoed inside his ribs, as though the door wasn't just in front of him, but inside of him. And louder the knocking became, the more dramatic and desperate his father grew. His words turned frantic, his gestures sharp, and for the first time the boy saw something strange burning behind his father's eyes. It was fear. The father tried to hide it, to mask it with stories, laughter, and comfort, but the boy had seen it, and he had never seen it before. Why was he afraid? His father's eyes had always been filled with many wonders, and most of all, they were a place where the boy had found assurance. But now the fear he saw gave birth to doubt. Perhaps his father was not sure after all. Perhaps there was more to the door than he had ever told. And why? Why did his father fear it so? Something about the door scared him. And if the door wasn't real, as the father had always claimed, then why should it frighten him at all? The boy had to know the truth about the knocking. He felt he could no longer trust the voice of his father. Something deep inside of him was stirring, deep calling to deep. It was as if there was a vastness on the other side of that door, a deepness pulling on his very soul. And for the first time in his life, he disobeyed the voice of his father. Dragging the weights of his chains, the boy turned towards the door. By now, he was only a shell of himself, thin, hollow, his eyes sunken in, his strength gone. The chains had worn him down until he was lost in every way a person can be lost. He raised a trembling hand, skin and bone, and touched the handle. He froze. It wasn't supposed to be there. The handle wasn't supposed to turn. In fact, it wasn't even real, was it? His father's voice hissed louder than ever. It's an illusion. Don't touch it. Nothing is out there. Everything you need is in here. The boy's mind spun, his heart pounded. It felt like a war was raging inside of him. And then the walls themselves seemed to come alive. The paintings raged and twisted, their once smooth forms now grotesque. The figures grew violent, their beauty collapsing into something truly haunting and perverse. They lunged, they clawed, they laughed with wicked delight. Their whispers became screams, promises of pleasure, threats of terror, and demands of worship. The boy staggered, his knees buckling, his breath shallow. Everything in the house rose up against him. His father's shrieks, the chains on his limbs, the perverse shadows clawing at his mind, all to keep him from that door. But through the chaos, the knocking thundered, louder than the lies, louder than the chains, louder than the house itself, and louder than the voice of his father. With all the strength he had left, the boy gripped the handle. And in that moment, his world turned on him in a flash. The familiar walls twisted into a predator, a set of strong, quivering jaws. What once felt comfortable now revealed itself as razor-sharp teeth, dripping with the blood of those who had lived in this prison before him. The boy staggered under the horror. He clung to the handle, desperate to know the truth. And to his shock, it turned. The door swung open. And then, the door, it broke free from its prison, and in poured the light. It wasn't a flicker. It wasn't a glow. It was a flood. The light tore into the room with violent force, infecting the darkness like a plague. Every shadow it touched recoiled as if stricken, shriveling into nothingness. The painted figures on the walls withered and screamed, their beauty dissolving into grotesque ruin before collapsing into stains and dust. The chains burned against the boy's flesh, trembling as if alive, fighting their last fight until they snapped beneath the weight of glory. This was no ordinary light, not the weak glow of flickering lamps, not the counterfeit warmth of his father's illusions. This light was living light, wild, holy, consuming, and unstoppable. A light that scorched and healed all at once, that revealed every hidden thing, yet called to the boy with a love deeper than he had ever known. The house stood naked, unmasked, exposed as a prison it always was. And the boy was revealed for the first time who he truly was, not free, not whole, not strong, but a slave in desperate need of rescue. And then through the brilliance, he saw him, a man standing in the doorway, clothed in the very light that had shattered the darkness. The boy's breath caught. The man's eyes blazed like fire, fearless and tender all at once. His voice, when it came, rolled like many waters, steadying the boy's heart even as he shook the room. His hands were scarred, strong, hands that had fought and hands that had carried. And suddenly, something shifted inside the boy. It was as though the veil over his mind tore away. In a flash of clarity, he saw it. His father had never been his protector. He was not his comforter, was not his friend. He was a liar. And if he could lie about the door, what else had he lied about? Who was he, really? When had the boy even met this man? Who had told him this deceiver was his father? The deeper he searched, the more certain he became. The man he had always called father didn't know him at all. Who was this man? He looked back. He saw his father in the light for the very first time. Thin, hollow, small, afraid. His true form laid bare. It was only in darkness that he could hide the hideous truth about himself, about who he really was. Upon his forehead, stained in blood, a single word: murderer. Across his chest, branded, father of lies. He had no real children, so he preyed upon the children of God. The only offspring he could produce were the lies that dripped from his tongue. In the light, he was nothing. He had nothing. He could give nothing. His business was taking. His heart was empty and cold. His knowledge was only of bitterness, suffering, pain, and fear. And the brush he had used to paint the beauty upon the walls, it had never offered beauty at all. It was deception. He wrapped suffering in shiny paper, tied pain in pretty bows, and sold death as if it were life. And for the first time in his life, the boy saw him for what he truly was: In a last lunge of desperation, the liar gasped, "Son, come to me. There is so much more that I can show you." But the man's gaze turned, his eyes burning like fire, locked on the deceiver, and with a voice like thunder over waters, he spoke, "Enough." The words struck like lightning. The liar collapsed, cowering, shivering like smoke and wind, until he was nothing but a trembling shadow at the edge of the light. The boy, trembling, lifted his head. He turned from the corner where his false father cowered and faced the man in the doorway. The light wrapped him like a robe, but it was his eyes that held the boy, eyes that saw through him and into him and yet did not turn away. For the first time in his life, the boy felt fully known and fully loved. The man reached out his hand with trembling fingers. The boy reached back and took hold. The man's voice, now as soft as a whisper, "Who do you choose, my son?" The boy's lips quivered, his heart pounding, and with tears streaming down his face, he answered, "I choose you." And in that moment, the last links of darkness shattered. The man smiled with radiant love and said, "My name is Jesus, and I see you, my son. I have always known you. You were lost in that house, but now you are found. It was I, the light shining in the darkness, bringing you home. And my love for you knows no end. I know all of this has been a lot, but I promise you it will get better. For I will never leave you, nor will I forsake you. Follow me, and you will never walk in darkness again. For now you are called free, light, family." And now, are you ready to meet your real Father? He has prepared a feast, a celebration. Welcome home. The boy's heart leapt for the first time. He wasn't afraid of what waited beyond. He was eager. The thoughts of his father's feast filled him with wonder. He could hardly wait to run. The door flung wide, and the boy, frail and pale, broken, stepped into the light. And as his foot crossed the threshold, something happened. Color rushed back to his skin. His shoulders lifted. Depth returned to his eyes. The hollow shell began to fill. The boy who had been fading away came alive. For the first time in his life, he felt warmth, not the cold, artificial glow of lamps, but the living warmth of the sun, the warmth of love, the warmth of freedom. And then he felt something more, a presence. It seemed to engulf everything. It was powerful, wise, and comforting all at once. It was pure, clean, and brilliant. It filled the air around him, and the boy breathed it in. His whole inner world came alive. The presence was not just near him. It became life within him. And for the first time, the boy knew the presence of the Spirit of God. He laughed. He really laughed. And for the first time in his life, the sky above him, it felt wide, and it was singing. The ground was steady and kind beneath his feet. Even the air itself seemed to rejoice. Behind him, the liar shrieked, his voice pathetic and weak, but Jesus turned around one last time, and with nothing more than a word, he silenced the deceiver, and the house was gone. The boy blinked in the brilliance of the day, adjusting to the world he had never known. The chains lay broken behind him, the illusions gone forever. Ahead, arms outstretched, stood his true Father, the one who had been waiting for him all along. And around the Father stood a host of heavenly beings, radiant, strong, celebrating a great victory. Banners lifted, faces bright, as if all creation sang. The Father spoke, his voice like love itself. "You are my Son, and you belong here with me. I will never lie to you or try to hurt you, for I am a good Father, and you, my son, are washed clean." The boy burst into joy, richer and deeper than anything he felt in the house of lies. Overcame, he leapt into the air and shouted with a loud, triumphant cry as he ran into his father's arms. And there, at last, he knew he was home. And he knew, for the first time ever, he was truly free.